A dog's daily routine of peering into a storm drain held an unexpected surprise when it was finally unveiled, leaving people astonished. In many countries, stray dogs are a common sight, but one particular dog's actions captured the fascination of onlookers. In Turkey, formerly known as Turkey, a shaggy and unkempt stray pup roamed the streets as part of his daily quest for food and water. Every day, he trotted down the road, joyfully wagging his tail at anyone who crossed his path, despite his challenging life on the streets. The routine took an intriguing turn when the dog's keen senses led him to the enticing aroma of delicious food wafting from a nearby butcher shop. Peering through the shop window, he observed customers purchasing generous cuts of meat for their dinners. The mere sight of the delectable food intensified his hunger, causing his stomach to emit a loud growl. Inside the shop, a young woman named Annie completed her transaction, purchasing a couple of large steaks. As she exited the shop and began her journey home, a sudden gurgle and whimper caught her attention. Bewildered, Annie turned around to find the stray dog gazing back at her with plaintive eyes. The dog's stomach growled once more, revealing his dire hunger. Annie immediately felt sympathy for the hungry stray and looked down at the steak she had just bought. Without hesitation, she re-entered the butcher's shop and requested any meat scraps or bones that the butcher couldn't sell. The generous butcher complied with her request. Returning outside with the food, Annie scanned the area for the stray dog, eventually spotting him from a distance. She knelt down and cautiously offered him the bone she had procured. Initially cautious, the dog approached slowly, enticed by the meal. Gradually, he succumbed to the temptation, wagging his tail as he accepted the substantial bone from Annie. Rather than devouring the food on the spot, the dog picked it up and strolled away, as if he had a destination in mind. Perplexed by the dog's behavior, Annie refrained from questioning it too much and resumed her journey home. The following day, as Annie walked down the street, she encountered the same stray dog from the previous day. The dog recognized her and bounded over, his tail wagging exuberantly. Annie couldn't resist showering him with affection. Although her time was limited, she purchased sausages from a nearby shop for the dog, but once again, he departed without eating them immediately. Intrigued by the dog's behavior, Annie had no choice but to let him go about his day as she went about hers. However, on the third day, something changed. The stray dog appeared to be waiting for her, and Annie had taken to carrying treats in her bag in the hopes of offering them to the needy pup. She greeted the dog with a smile and presented him with the treats. This time, when the dog walked away, Annie decided to follow him. They journeyed together until they reached a bustling street where the shabby dog approached a storm drain. Seated beside the drain, he peered inside and dropped one of the treats Annie had given him into it before savoring the other. The young woman found herself perplexed by the dog's behavior. For several consecutive days, Annie discovered the dog sitting and fixated on the storm drain, always dropping half of the treats she offered into the drain before enjoying his share. Annie's curiosity eventually got the better of her, and she decided to investigate what had captured the dog's attention. She approached the storm drain cautiously, mindful of the vigilant dog standing guard nearby. However, the dog watched her with curiosity, making no aggressive moves. As Annie peered into the drain, she gasped at the sight below. She quickly reached for her phone and dialed the fire department for assistance. It was clear she needed their help. Roughly half an hour later, a pair of firefighters arrived and inquired about the situation. Annie explained what she had seen, but when the dog began to growl at the firefighters, they hesitated, unsure of how to proceed. It was Annie who came to the rescue, calmly approaching the dog and offering him a treat. When he accepted it, she gently restrained him to keep him away from the drain and the firefighters. With the stray dog safely out of the way, the firefighters began the task of opening the storm drain. A small crowd had gathered to observe their efforts, since the drain was situated on a busy street. After a tense few minutes, one of the firefighters emerged from the drain with a tiny kitten in his arms. The bystanders were all astonished, but the surprises didn't end there. The firefighter repeated this process 4 more times, each time revealing another kitten. Annie couldn't believe her eyes. She had suspected something was in the drain when she peered in, but she had no idea that 5 adorable kittens were trapped inside. The stray dog managed to wriggle free from Annie's grasp and eagerly approached the firefighter holding the kittens, Upon seeing the small felines, he wagged his tail and sniffed them. The kittens responded by mewing back at the dog, and he approached the firefighters, seemingly inquiring about how the young kittens had ended up in such a predicament. The firefighters explained that the kittens were likely swept into the drain during heavy rainfall. However, considering their dire situation, they weren't starving, thanks to the stray dog sharing his food with them daily. Touched by the dog's selflessness, Annie knew what she wanted to do next. She informed the firefighters that she would take the kittens home with her, raising them until they were ready to be adopted. The firefighters agreed and handed the kittens over to Annie. As she headed home with the kittens, Annie called out to the stray dog, saying, "Come on, Benny, it's time to go home." The dog happily bounded up to her. Annie found loving homes for 4 of the kittens when they were old enough, while she decided to keep one for herself, as she had grown to love them dearly. Benny, the shaggy dog, finally had a loving home to call his own, as Annie couldn't bear to leave him on the streets after his remarkable act of kindness towards the tiny felines. The family lived happily together, with neither Fudge the cat nor Benny showing any inclination to return to the streets. Annie loved them dearly, and they reciprocated her affection. What an incredible story! Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to stay updated with more heartwarming tales.